Right, good morning. It's just past 12 o'clock, so I think we'll make a start. So my name's Sean Keys, and I'm the chair of the ACE Northwest, and I'm also the managing director of Sutcliffe Engineers and Surveyors, predominantly based in the northwest of England. So today, I would like to welcome you to the ACE webinar organised by the ACE Northwest on the future of engagement. And I'm delighted to say that today we have a fabulous panel joining us, including Adrian Gould and Michaela of Arup, Mike Saunders and Brawn of Commonplace. So I'm sure they will enthrall us as the morning goes on. The webinar will showcase recent advantages and practical applications of tools which will enhance engagement, ensuring positive outcomes for people and place. There will be a panel discussion and questions and answers. If anybody's got any questions as we're going through, please put them in the chat box to the side. Before we start, there's a little bit of housekeeping. We'll share a slide with you regarding competition law, which I've just asked you to spend a brief 10-15 seconds reading that. So, thank you. And as gently said before, the chat box is on the right hand side, which, as I said, it'll be open throughout, and the different panelists will give responses, and I will give responses as we're working our way through. Don't worry if you miss anything today, because it will be uploaded onto the ACE website in the next few days. And what I would suggest you do is you advise any of your colleagues in your workplace to have a look at it, and it'll be available for a while. They're always interesting to catch up in your free time. So the running order today, we'll start with Michaela of Arup. So I will pass over to Michaela. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Sean. So hi, everybody. Really good to meet you. As Sean said, my name is Michaela and I'm from Arup, and I sit in advisory services in Northwestern Yorkshire. And I lead a team of people in organisation and logistics and operations folk. And I also am UK IMEA stakeholder lead. And I have to say, I'm actually passionate about engagement. So my experience is in complex client projects that require significant attention to engagement. So this is ranging from airports to energy projects to master planning and to regeneration. So what I thought I'd do is spend this first kind of 5 minutes before the rest of the guys talk, which kind of talking about what engagement is, some real clarification about what we mean about that, which is actually quite important when we then move on to talk about digital as an enabler for effective engagement. So in my view, engagement is the most important element in a project, particularly in the built environment where we affect people. And that's you and I in our daily lives. It's all about change. And we're asking folk to interact with something new, travel differently, make a purchase decision in a different way. And that actually can be inconvenient, and it can feel really uncomfortable. So simply put, engagement is a critical part of delivering successful projects, from feasibility stage all the way through to operations, and ranging in nature from influencing senior stakeholders, creating a narrative based on strategic imperatives, developing a consents process, early engagement to aid a business case and planning applications, through to real grassroots community conversations, large-scale consultations and operational readiness. So it's a huge range. It's not just about statutory consultation. And in fact, if you leave engagement to this point, the horse has often bolted. So engagement with stakeholders is about creating a real trusted environment, a foundation for timely and genuine human interactions with clients and their communities, investor stakeholders, unions, campaign activist groups, all kind of using tools and techniques that is based on dilemma sharing, listening, issue resolution, but making sure that all of these stakeholder groups are listened to and appropriately supported, and positive challenge is welcomed to deliver those better outcomes that we all want. Now, really importantly, to maybe some of you guys as well, is engagement is about creating that evidence of interactions to support your projects. and how this flows into your project and programme governance structure. So that flow through of engagement into projects directly links into decision making. It needs to demonstrate a clear way of processing all of that data, feeding back and validating, so that thread from the narrative is tied into that evidence that you've collected and supports your plans and how you've then incorporated them into your projects. And these all should demonstrate those really basic principles of engagement, which are around fairness, inclusivity and accessibility, and choice and control. So how does all of this, what is engagement, how does it help reach our audience? Well, look, we all know that COVID accelerated advances and investment in technology to quickly fill that gap that face-to-face traditional engagement enabled. And we've seen massively interesting movements in demographics where a much wider population has engaged with technology using FaceTime and Zoom or some of the platforms that Glenn and Adrian are going to share. And we're constantly looking into ways, engagement folk are constantly looking into ways of being truly inclusive. And digital platforms enable the content to be provided in other languages, text size changes, visualizations, sound adjustments. And also our clients, so some of you guys are really asking us for more. You're realizing the power of engagement and the insights it can give. And digital tools can help support this by making the process of gathering all of those insights more efficient and more transparent. And Mike will talk more about this. But digital helps bring the power of technology, analytics, and innovation to that humane practice of engagement to enrich our analysis and our then capabilities. You know, tools such as Sound Lab used at airports and HS2 have been pivotal in enabling public to understand noise levels, and immersive technology that enables our clients to reimagine their places. I will stress, however, that digital does not take the steps out of the dance. It basically sharpens the music. You still have to go through the process of understanding your narrative, who your stakeholders are, how they like to be engaged. But the richness of the insights you gain in one whole place can be enormously beneficial. So in kind of conclusion, engagement is not a PR campaign, it's not a one-off activity, it's not a tick box. It's a deliberative set of planned and continuous activities through all stages in a project that elicits insights, it influences, it connects people, and it creates better outcomes. So I'm now going to pass to Mike, who's going to talk more about the digital and the people and the place. So thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Michaela, and thanks for inviting us to this webinar, Sean. So Commonplace is a digital engagement platform. Glenn's going to show you a bit on it a little bit later on. We've engaged over 5.5 million people on Commonplace across 1,500 or more projects with developers, local government, and often working with partners like you. And we love to work like that. So I just wanted to set out a bit more about the context, particularly in terms of digital and what it can do very broadly. I think the business case, if you like, for digital as part of engagement has changed dramatically in the last 2 or 3 years. Michaela mentioned COVID, huge uptake of digital and kind of refocus of energy during COVID on neighbourhood. In that time also, the government published a white paper on planning in August 2020, and they've recently published a draft bill called the Regeneration Levelling Up Bill, which I'm sure you're all aware of, which is committing very strongly to increasing public voice in planning, strengthening significantly digital planning, particularly in data in planning, and also building on the use of design codes and potentially making those more local, and enabling engagement with them digitally. They also have this idea of street votes, which I don't know if anybody has seen, but it's unclear exactly how it might work. But if it does happen, could be actually quite radical in terms of engagement in the future. So we've done some research across the whole nation because we wanted to find out a bit more about what people actually want. And two things stand out. Firstly, people want more say. It's really, really clear. 76% of people who responded said they want a greater say in what's going on in their area. So there's huge demand. And secondly, that, as Michaela said, people want to be engaged. They don't want to be surveyed. It's really, really important that there's an ongoing conversation and that they're kept in the loop. And of course, digital channels can do those things really well. Not because they replace face-to-face engagement, but they can supplement it and they can do certain things really, really well. So what are those things? Firstly, reach. Okay, you know, you can reach tens or even hundreds times more people using digital tools. And I think that in its own right, just in terms of numbers, is really important. Inclusivity, Michaela also mentioned. Yes, there are people who can't access digital, but there are many, many more people who can't access some of the other face-to-face and non-digital ways of engaging. So in particular in communities where there are younger people, multiple languages spoken, digital is absolutely critical as part of the mix. Mobile's super, super important for this. We get almost 3/4 of all of our responses on mobile phones. So it's got to work on a mobile phone. And maybe slightly counterintuitively, trust and friendliness, digital does really well if you do it in the right way. We've specialised in making digital experience really friendly and really relevant. As I said, it's not a survey, it's a conversation. It's snackable, that means you can access it in short bursts. We use 3D, we use very, very visual techniques to make it all fun and understandable. And one of the ways that digital really stands out in its leveraging of data. That benefits us all because it provides more intelligence, greater ability to interpret information quickly, more robust evidence, and it can do all of this without employing an army of Excel analysts. And actually, as important as all of that is that it can feed back to the community what they've already said. We call it closing the loop. But what I mean is showing people, telling them that the conversation they've been involved in, people have been listening to, summarizing it visually, summarizing what's happening next, making this conversation really conversational and ongoing. Digital can do that very, very well. And it's cheap if you do it well. You know, digital doesn't cost a huge amount of money, and you can get extraordinary benefits from using it. So I think Adrian's now going to show us what Arup's been doing.
Yeah, I will. So I'm going to take you just a very sort of brief journey, I'll be honest. So let me find the right one. Here we go. So hopefully you can see this. This is not very pretty, this first one, and that's part of the message. So this is where we started on some of this digital engagement. Now, I'm not an engagement person. I'm a software product person. But back in 2018, we did an overlay of a physical public consultation with Highways England. So we did a digital version of it, 360-degree scan of the room, and we overlaid all the content in the room so that someone on a computer could read it, engage with it, open the PowerPoint, open the video. So this is what it looked like back then. So it was much more to do with a digital overlay of a physical, and as Mike said, to get a different demographic, to widen it out to a different demographic that maybe couldn't attend in person. But if you look at where those things have gone to now, these are the types of experiences we've got now. So much more visual, much more 3D. And each of these things is a document that you can open. The document opens very much, and excuse my internet because I'm in a thing. It opens up so they can really engage with the document, but it's all within the room. So the person engages within that room, but it's much more visual. So all videos run within the room, all engagement, you can have questionnaires, you can have everything. The key thing is about that accessibility is this isn't a heavy platform either. So it runs low bandwidth. You don't need a massive, 20, 50, 100 meg sort of bandwidth. But you can get so much content in these things. And the thing about people want to have their say, but they want to have their say maybe in the environment they've got. So this is one example here where you can now have an engagement with a thing. This is a planning proposal, but you can then have on the right hand screen, people can, fresh questionnaire, feed, agree, disagree, write the answer, submit. And then they can go around the questionnaire, around the room and do this from the comfort of their own home and get this thing in. And as an engagement perspective, the people receiving this data, if I, as an end user, respond to, 10 things in the room, it's all collected together. If I want to give my email address, it's connected as my email address. An engagement specialist can then go back and speak to me, or I can do it anonymously, but it's collected as one thing. So we can do these ways of collecting feedback there. You can do it in a geospatial way, which I know Commonplace and other platforms also do. So we can embed a geospatial map, which is basically to do with people allowing them to drop a point on a map and then say what they want to say. So these are things so people can like, dislike, they can add comments, they can add photos. And these are really good. We've had some really good things with Kensington Chelsea Borough Council, where they had something like 700 people updated content and comments on there. So then once that lot is there, you start to see the demographics. And this is where Mike mentioned about actually most of our traffic is mobile as well. So 58% of all the traffic to some of these rooms, and you can see the numbers we're getting in the rooms, 9, 10, 15, 20,000 in a room. Mobile very much. And the demographic balance on the left-hand side here, you can see traditional public consultation in person has maybe a narrower demographic. You can see here we're engaging very much 25 to 32-year-olds, 16 to 24-year-olds. So we've got a really good balance by using the digital platform. And then you can also, with that digital enablement, you can also pull out the analytics. So you can pull out stuff like this from what people are questioning, what people are asking, what people are saying. And that type of thing is really valuable. If you then get a huge amount of responses, you can start to do natural language processing on some of the analytics and things like that, which again is super, super important and valuable. And we see people entering rooms from not just the local area in a small town, but people that are engaged in that town, interested, but maybe traveling that week or maybe have moved away. They can still engage on the digital platform. So that's really what I wanted to show, and I'm conscious of time, so I'm probably going to move on so we don't get short, but that's the type of capabilities we can use by running. And actually I think really important is we're not seeing any loss in the number of digital engagements we're being asked to do, because even post-COVID, they're now running them beside physical one and a digital one in parallel, and I think that's really important. So I'll hand it on, I think.
Thanks, Adrian. I think it's me now, so I'll just share my screen. So I have got, I think, 10 minutes to try and squeeze a lot of stuff in, but just first of all, a couple of slides to share with you. Don't worry, there's only 2. It loads. There we go. So just to put a bit of context around some of the stuff that Mike was talking about, this is some work we did with Blackpool, a couple of northern-based case studies for you guys. So during the pandemic, Blackpool Borough Council used Commonplace to run a public dialogue all about Blackpool's future. And we received over 3,600 contributions from around 1,600 people, and that was in just a 6-week period. And 70% of these expressed positive support for the themes that the town's investment plan had showed. And actually only 10% of that number opposed. And we got over 2/3 of online responses via mobile, again, reiterating that mobile is the way forward for interaction. And that's similar across all of our projects, as Mike said. And the openness allowed residents to see contributions by their neighbours and to agree or propose alternatives, adding to the sense of trust and transparency, which is a really important part of any digital consultation. Similarly, Leeds, the use of Commonplace by Leeds City Council on their transport strategy is a really fantastic example of really moving the dial on scale and constructiveness of engagement. Conversations have been about citywide as well as neighbourhood-based changes over more than 2 years, and has resulted in a phenomenal 65,000 responses. And it enabled the council to build a really, really deep understanding of community need and expectations for infrastructure investment, taking people from the very local to strategic feedback. That has informed their future plans. Leeds is one of the councils to take advantage of the offer we made at the beginning of the COVID epidemic to local authorities, which in the end was taken up by almost 50 local authorities, and we delivered over 300,000 responses around the country. And that's a real demonstration of how the pandemic has created a new energy amongst communities to engage. Now, in the 8 minutes I've got left, I'm going to try and show you some great examples of our work. So first of all, we've got 2 modules, community heat map and our survey tool or design feedback tool. We've just released our new iteration of Commonplace 2.0, where everything has been upgraded. So we've got several versions of the map now, and this is one of them. So this is a navigational tool, very visual, a bit like some of the stuff that Adrian was showing you, where I might live in this area, so East London, but I live in Canning Town. So I could go to this part of the map and click on this arrow, and it'll take me to the actual proposal for that relevant piece. I might also, though, be interested in what's happening on the other side of town. So I could go to that area, click on that part, and be taken straight to that most relevant piece of information for me. Some people want to look at everything in their region, but most people want to keep it local to what they're looking to do or get involved in. The mainstay is still our comment on a map tool, which is similar to what Adrian showed you. We've deployed this probably across 1,500 projects over the last few years. And this is very, very interactive. And what the new map can do and what the new map provides is your ability to add different data layers. It's a really new function for this map, and something that's really important to enable you to kind of bespoke the tool. And that can be done by adding on here a toggle for GIS overlays, for image overlays, all sorts of different things that you can add into this map as a data layer. We're working with other tech providers to add different pieces to the jigsaw as well. So if I click on this, for example, that'll now you'll see now that all the postcodes have appeared. Everything's presented in a neat and easy way to understand. So if I click on this comment, go to read more of that will appear on the left-hand side. As I said, we've had some really neat work done on this map, and it's taken quite a bit of investment. The main features being, like I said, the data layering and what you can actually do in map to analyze the data that's on the map without having to extract that. So we can lasso comments, you can take comments out of a certain area and understand what's going on, and you can analyze all sorts of different elements of contributions. So if I just pull that back in, for example, I can go to the contributions, I can see what's on here, and I can go, right, let's just see what's, if I can get my mouse to work, let's just see what the positive comments are, take the negative or neutral ones out, and look at all those and extract that information. We're also, like I said, having some great tech integrations, one of which is with View City. So I could click on this button here, it will take me to a 3D perspective of the map that I was on, and I can quickly scan the horizon, see what's going on in the place that I live, what's consented in blue, what's in planning in yellow, and what else is happening down the line. So just some really neat developments for our map piece. Again, it's not just that. We've now developed the map so images can be overlaid onto the map. Let's get rid of this. So we can very easily get the visual map up, get the diagrams that you're working on or the master plans, and quickly overlay that onto the section of the map and invite you to drop a pin on that piece so you can see what that's actually going to look like physically, zoom into the different areas on that map and comment on the things that are really important to you. Similarly, this is something that we've really just recently released. We have the ability to leave comments on a map. As you can see here, this is something we're doing in Watford, but in this instance, we've done it via a voice note. So people can go to the map, they can leave a voice note. That voice note is analysed for sentiment, and then that is processed, and everybody can go onto that map and listen to what that person has said. So just some real advancement in the technology and the use of the map tool. As I said, we've also developed the other half of what we do. So the map tool is generally used for quite early stage engagement. We now have the design feedback or the survey tool, which is in front of you. And again, to echo what both Adrian and Mike said, most of the usage now, nearly 70% or 3/4, is via mobile. So we had to upgrade what we had before to represent that change in usage. So if you imagine this is your mobile phone, your smartphone or tablet, everything is accessible in a single scroll. So here we have what we call tiles, and these tiles contain all the thematic pieces to, in this instance, a development of or zero carbon Manchester or development of an area. And everything is everything. Put the phone down. Sorry. Yeah. Everything is signposted, so it's easy to navigate, easy for you to go to the piece you're interested in, and to not get distracted by things like your phone ringing. But also, we can access all the other parts of the piece that you're working on. So again, more proposals. We've added a timeline feature so people can very easily and quickly see what's happening on the timeline and what's coming next. And we've added the news all accessible in one single scroll. So you can go to the news items which are posted by you as the client, which make this kind of engagement really closing a loop, like Mike said, 360-degree communication, and not episodic. Episodic engagement is the worst. So that's just a quick heads up on what that looks like from the homepage. I'm going to whiz through these now because I've literally got 3 minutes. Keep it interactive, keep it visual, give people things to play with, but have meaning. So this is a very basic image 3D overlay slider. So it's Olympic Park. There's a before and after shot, and it's just a very neat visual tool to help people understand what's happening and what the changes in their area. Also, we have this comment on an image. So here's an image of what the new street might look like. What don't I like about this? If I can go onto the map, I might live in this house. I don't like the fact that these bins are left out here. So I could type that in here, add my title, bins, and then leave my comment about how I don't like that. Or equally, how I love the new trees, or how I love the way that the road is laid out. So keep it visual, give people the opportunity to interact and to have their say. Similarly, again, this is just the homepage for some work we're doing with Decorum, but you can see all the tiles signposted as to what they're all about, but also that people have left voice contributions. So I can quickly navigate straight to the tiles of interest or go and listen to what people have said. We don't just have a single way of communicating, we're developing different types and different structures of question flows to suit your project. So we have a number of ways to communicate. We still offer long and short form response mechanics. They just take a little bit more analysis. But again, we do sentiment rating. So here you can see number rating and smiley face rating, as well as priority listing, something we're doing lots and lots of now. Pose a question, give people the options, and they can rank those options as as the most important. Similarly with polling, we do lots of polling. I think we've got a couple coming up in a minute through Sean. But again, multiple text polls, pose a question, let people choose what's important to them. And again, with single text polls, and also with image polling, we're doing lots and lots of image polling, presenting design ideas and asking people to select what they like the most. Again, this is all really, really important that we're so interactive and that people can have their say, but none of that is any good. And as Adrian showed, without having something that knits it all together and makes sense of what's going in the front end. And we use our dashboard, which is client facing only, for you to understand that in a really visual, easy to digest way. And the new dashboard piece of which is here will help you do that. And there's all sorts of ways that you can represent this data graphically. We've got word clouds. We've got ways that sentiment is analysed, different analysis of different parts of the surveys or the data that you're getting in from the map. It just provides huge efficiencies and helps you to make sense of what's been going on your project. Finally, just want to highlight a couple of things. So this is a project we did in Wick in Caithness in Scotland with Sustrans a little while ago, and it just highlights the difference between kind of where we've come in the last couple of years. This is a hyperlocal project. As you can see, probably 200-300 meters worth of a high street, but this was equally important to these locals and to these commercial businesses along this strip as anything else we've ever done. We maybe engaged or got 150 responses, but that developed into quite a complex design for that high street, and people were involved in what was the ongoing design and build out of that place, which again was really important to them. Hyperlocal engagement, as opposed to something we're about to launch with the DAR group out in Lahore. So this is slightly different in scale. So we're talking 12,000 square kilometers, 15 million people engaged, and we now have the capability to deploy this not only in English, but also in Urdu, because that's the local dialect. So if I click of a button, this is now flicking into Urdu, right to left script for that particular dialect, he says. And similarly, I can go back to the toggle and flick that into Punjabi. It's just a bit slow, sorry, my internet connection. But just an idea of the journey we've been on and where we're going to as a business and what we've been able to achieve over the last 18 months. And actually the pandemic has probably driven a lot of that. So there you go, it's now changed to Urdu, and similarly I can change it to Punjabi and it will flick into that. And that's it really. Just one last thing to reiterate. I've gone over by 90 seconds, so I don't want to get in trouble. But as Mike said, you know, and in fact Michaela said, this is not instead of face-to-face engagement, and you will never get as rich an engagement as you do by standing in front of somebody and talking to them about what they like or what they don't like. But digital provides scale like nobody else does, and it also reaches a really important audience that we like to call the silent majority. It's this 25 to 45 demographic you can see here, who are really, really interested in engaging about their future of their place, but often don't know how to. So we help you reach those, and we help you reach those numbers in huge majorities. These aren't the people that have got the time to go to a town hall event at 3 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon because they're at work or they've got young families. So just wanting to end it on that note. This is the audience that you'll be reaching, and we will help you do that. And that's it for me.
Right, that's fantastic. That's my cue to come back in. So thank you, ladies and gents. That was fabulous. Really enjoyed that. Loads of good questions that will come through. Before we do that, I've got two polls to do, which Chatna will put on there. So poll 1, has the discussion prompted new ideas for areas that digital engagements could add value to your projects? So there's a couple of answers there, and I'll just ask everybody to answer them. And the second question is, what kinds of application do you think offers the most added value for digital engagements? Again, if I could ask you to respond to them. Hopefully we've all answered those, and we'll come back with that shortly if that's come through. Thank you, chat there. We've got a couple of questions, I think, in the chat box, and then I've got a couple of general questions for the panels, which you can pick them up as you see. So neurodiversity is an important consideration, and I think we have a way to go. How we present information should take all the needs in consideration from how we present the information, keep messages clear and involved in neurodiverse voices. As Mike says, sure, but so that's really a comment rather than a question. So my question is I love it. I think it's the way forward. But I find when people do digital engagements, they can either be too honest or say things a little bit controversially that they wouldn't necessarily to say to people's faces. So I'll just throw that out there. I don't know who wants to pick that up. Is how do we actually ensure that the digital engagement doesn't have any extreme biases in there? So I throw that to Glenn.
Well, we have, if you're talking about gaming the system, we have anti-gaming software that we deploy as part of the package. So we have a product and tech team that can spot stuff that's happening, as well as aggressive or an anti-profanity software as well. So we tend to see where the system's being gamed, or where things are being corralled to maybe get towards a certain point. It's very easy to spot at the back end. And what we do in that instance is very politely remind users of their terms and conditions. But we also will very, very quickly speak to the client involved and tell them, look, you might see some spikes in data. That's because of this, this, and this. So we're very hot on that. We have all of the kit to make sure we track that, and so that doesn't sort of sway the numbers.
And probably I'll flick this over to the engineers. Is that how useful will this tool be to engineers in accurately determining what the public think about some of the maybe their highway schemes or their planning schemes? I don't know if that's I think Michaela or Michaela, from Arup.
So honestly, these, first of all, just the first question that you asked is really interesting. We often find that people who want to say these real truths want an audience as well, Sean. So often digital actually kind of dampens down some of the kind of more interesting comments that potentially we get through consultations. So it is quite an interesting dynamic. The second bit is that these digital tools, I can't tell you how useful they are for our designers and our engineers, simply because actually we do this design, and what we're showing is with them, and so what they're seeing live and constant. I mean, you heard Mike and Adrian talk about the thousands of people that are making comments on, is they see how people are reacting to design.
Absolutely.
And then what we say to public and folk who we're engaging with is, this is the boundary that we've got, this is what we're showing you, what do you think? And so then when people respond, we're able then to be able to adapt our designs, adapt, schemes, and actually demonstrate that really clearly and effectively through these tools. But also, really importantly, we're able to say why we can't do things, because, not everybody is an engineer and not everybody is a designer. So there are parameters and there are barriers, but it enables us to really clearly show this.
No, that's brilliant. I completely agree. So, Adrian, I'll throw a question over at you. Do you think that digital engagement will help improve and particularly speed up the planning process, because what we're finding at the moment is planning is just taking 2 to 3, maybe 4 or 5 times longer than it should. So will this type of digital engagement speed up and help that process?
So I'm probably not, and I'm probably going to pass across to Michaela, because I am software product, and I've managed to trigger an engagement thing, which is great from the tools we do. But from the planning perspective, I mean, it allows a wider group to come in. So some of the consultations we've seen, we've submitted all of the engagement that came in, which showed a much wider demographic into the legal submission. So that definitely helped, because it allowed the clarity to say, we have not just engaged with 12 people that happen to walk into our church thingy, we've engaged with 1,000 people across this demographic, and these are the feedback. So that, I think, cannot not help. So that's got to help. But I think from the lengthening of the planning thing, probably Michaela is better placed than me.
Well, that was a slanted question, so I'll answer it on your behalf. I think it will. And I think if the planners know that they've had 100 comments from the residents in that area when we're building something, then it'll give that planner the support to know that it's the right decision, or equally if it's the wrong decision.
And the demographic, the breadth of the demographics is so fundamental. Is so
and Sean, I think what's really important about this, and I know Mike will probably comment as well, is that this engagement service or engagement practice and these tools that enable us to have these conversations are building that evidence base. That evidence base into the planning system is really important, and we're able to demonstrate things more efficiently, more clearly, through wide demographics, you know, being completely inclusive. It's just a much smarter way of doing things.
No, absolutely. Mike, have you got something to add to that? I'm sure you have.
Yeah, I've got very quickly. So we've got lots of examples of where planning has been speeded up, and a couple of points around it. I think one is that we haven't really mentioned it yet, but one of the things that we do is that we develop an audience on Commonplace. So you know, we work with developers and we work with local government and other organizations, and each time somebody responds, they have the option to say, I want to hear about more stuff that's going on in my area. And if they tick that box, then that means that we can let them know and notify them when other conversations are starting. So if a developer's launching an engagement for a scheme in an area where we have significant audience, and we have significant audience in all of the major cities now, then we can speed up dramatically them reaching that audience. So that's a very immediate kind of speed benefit. The other point which Michaela touched on is that the robustness of the evidence that you collect when you're talking to that number of people, you can't underline how important that is. It's important for the initial submission, but it's also really important if the submission gets challenged. And we've had a number of customers who have submitted and have had a challenge, and they've actually been able to use the data that has been collected on Commonplace to defend that challenge successfully. So, you know, it really provides this, not only the initial speed, but the speed that you can deliver right through to the conclusion of the whole process.
No, indeed. One thing I'm truly looking forward to is the day that I've got a Google Earth type image with the planning blocks that I think Commonplace showed, so you can actually walk down a road and see the different applications that are coming, and even possibly roll back the clock in the same way that you can do it with Google Earth. I'll probably ask the question about the groups that we're not necessarily catching. Are there any ways on the digital engagement that we can still try and catch some of those groups? So possibly the groups, I think you said over 45, but I actually think between 45 and 55 people are still going to come in. But how can we get that sort of over 45 or group and ensure that they engage with us? So I think that might go back to Glenn, I think.
Well, we work really hard on targeting audiences, and we can do that before and during any project. So we have, you know, for specific younger audiences even, but as well as the older ones, we have targeted social media outreach campaigns which we can use. But there's a number of examples where perhaps we've had a campaign running and we've looked at the dashboard with the client, the customer success team, and said, look, you know, we really think we should be hitting this demographic. How can we improve that? Because that's what the dashboard's there to do, to let you know who you're reaching and who you're not reaching. So we will then deploy a number of tactics to reach out to those people in conjunction with the client. So if it's a local authority, we'll do some door drops. A good example of that is in Harrow, who have a corporate license with us, working with their Asian community who are apathetic to engagement in this way. And we went and reached out to those audiences in a more traditional sense alongside the client, and we're able to deploy the Commonplace in a physical sense. So our tool can be used offline. People can be walked through a survey on the doorstep. So there's lots of different ways we can reach. And the beauty of the digital tool and the dashboard particularly is it tells you exactly who you are and who you're, more importantly, not reaching.
Okay. So how do you think the digital with the more traditional routes of engagement, how do the results overlap? Is there a distortion in the results?
Go on, Michaela, you go first.
No, okay. So
Sorry, Michaela, yeah, my apologies. You go first, Michaela. My apologies.
No, it's fine. I think look, they overlap in a really beautiful way, to be honest with you. You know, actually, I think most people who work in engagement would agree that actually using those kind of things hand in hand is the right way forward. But as Glenn's just really, you know, brilliantly demonstrated, you can still have a face-to-face but use a digital tool. So the data is still coming in the same way. And I think we just need to be clever about how we collect this data and make sure. I mean, I know at Arup we're looking at a kind of full common data platform that no matter what kind of tool you use, it all comes into a central pot, which then you can pull out that kind of data that you need. So I'm absolutely of the view that they go in hand.
Mike, you were going to say something then, I think. Thank you.
I completely agree with Michaela. I think some of the ways that we have combined digital and face-to-face are quite interesting. So, for example, we've run or we've worked on a number of citizen panels with local government where you have a relatively small group of people who are in intense engagement. You know, they're spending days discussing and debating issues. And Commonplace has been used as a kind of digital wrapper around that intensive central engagement. So communicating out to the broader community what's been discussed in those groups, and then feeding back in ideas from the broader community about what they might want to take into account or pick up in the next actual citizen panel. So I think there's some really interesting ways that hybrid can work, and I think we'll see more and more great examples of that happening.
No, absolutely, couldn't agree more with you. Now, one of the things I worry about when we allow software to have too great an influence is that it can be distorted. So I think this may be on for you, Adrian. Can any of the analytics in the background be distorted to slant a result, or what processes are we putting in place to prevent that from happening?
Data is data. So yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, that's the beauty of data, and the risk of data is people can maybe cut through and cut it in ways that's like statistics. So, but I mean, it shouldn't be, because that should be regulated. That should be going through multiple sets of approvals when you're coming out with answers and backed up with the data. So, but I think our job through the digital platform side is to collect that data so it's clear where it's come from, who it's come from, and then the engagement specialists then go through it. And that is possibly one of the challenges of using something like natural language processing, where you take it away from the humans doing the thing to trying to accelerate it with an algorithm doing it. Yep. That, I think, is where you need to be very careful. So one of the things that I know most of us are doing, and this will be commonplace in us, is where we're using algorithms, a lot of the time we're actually using people next to it to validate as we go through this journey, rather than jumping in and going, right, the algorithm says this. And it's actually, it can be quite good to take the core data, run it through the people process of, you know, the evaluation and get those themes, run it through some algorithms and just double check in those early days whether we're getting any skews and any things like that. And I think that is hugely important.
No, indeed. Well, I can't believe that's now time, but I've had an amazing time listening to what you guys have had to talk about. I could generally talk for longer. And as I said, it's clearly the future. and there's more work to be done in this field, and I'm convinced it will lead to a better building process and better buildings in time and quicker speed. So on behalf of the ACE and the ACE Northwest, just like to thank the panelists for their efforts today. It's been really interesting. It's been a brilliant seminar, and I'd like to thank all the attendees for attending. And don't forget, all the attendees, pass it on to your colleagues in work. The webinar will be up in the ACE webpage very soon. But so thank you very much. And on behalf of myself and all the people attending, I'd like to thank the panelists. So thank you, and good luck. Look forward to seeing you all again.
Thank you.